lying, yeah, yeah. I'd be lying if I said I didn't need you. I'd be lying. The world is turning like a spinning top every moment that we're together. So baby, please don't stop. My heart is yours forever. When I feel your body tremble in my arms, I lose all my self-control. A storm of emotion comes over me, and I never.
All right, good evening and welcome to the 11th edition of the Real Men Don't Play show. And this is going to be a historic evening that you would want to share with your grandkids, because we got history makers in the house and decision makers and just champions of commerce. But you were listening to a group called Triple Threat out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And the singer that went by the name at the time of Kevin Mack, to the far right on that picture, is now the executive vice president of AEG Worldwide. He only answers to the owner of the company. And he shared that with me yesterday when I was in a meeting at his office at AEG. And I said, Kevin, I'm going with that for the opening of the Real Men Don't Play show. So welcome once again to the 11th edition of the Real Men Don't Play show. One of the reasons this is such a special occasion, I've known the people to my far left, starting with Mr. Horace Bowers and his daughter Vivian, practically since I came to L.A. in 1983. But more formally since 1988, when I met the late Mohammed Nasruddin, who was the founder of Recycling Black Dollars. And they were already immersed in not only participating in the group and the concept of Recycling Black Dollars, they put money back into the organization. And more importantly, they've been operating in this community that we call Los Angeles for so many years that I'm going to have to let them tell you, because it damn near started before I was born. And I'm 59 years old. So without any further ado, I want Mr. Horace Bowers, the man who was the driving force behind Bowers & Sons Cleaners, to just say hello to my audience and tell us a little bit about what made you start a business in Los Angeles on at the time was the historic Central Avenue.
Well, that's a long story. Thanks for having me here. But I'll have to go back a little further than Central Avenue.
Okay.
When I came to California at the age of 18 with $26 in my pocket.
That was big money back then.
Yeah, but I didn't even know where I was. Didn't know where I was. And just out of school, the work that I did in Florida was hotel work, what we call bellhop. You couldn't get that kind of work out here. So I'd heard about some friends that was pressers. So I went to a place, told the man I knew how to press, had never had my hand on a press. When I caught it and the steam jumped out, I jumped and screamed. And he told me, he said, well, if you work for me for 30 days for nothing, I'll teach you how to press. I'll teach you the business. So I did stay there 30 days. But I started noticing that I was getting 10 cents for the press a pair of pants, and they were getting $1 for cleaning it. So I said, I'm on the wrong end of this game. So at 20 years, when I was 20, I went into business. I bought a cleaners, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
What year was that?
1950? That's my secretary over there.
Oh,
she used to
okay.
be my wife, but I can't. I woke up one morning and she was my secretary.
You started this business in 1950? Math is not my strong suit, so help me out, Vivian. How many years is that? 63
It's a little over 63 years, yes.
My God, Lord have mercy. And you have been in the same location?
Oh, no. We've been up to 4 of them, 4 different cleaners at the same. One while they had cleaners, everybody had changed. And rent and payroll got too much, so everybody went back down to 1. So now I left Temple Street, Temple and Westlake, went to Central Avenue, and then we had one on Venice, and I don't know. It had at one time it was 4 of them, and so the Watts riot was the first evidence I had of knowing where Los Angeles was. We just had gone to Central Avenue, and they said the riot was on in the area of 103rd, so I drove out there to see what that was, come back, closed the cleaners, and went home. I had a van and a car, so I had the kids to ride with me in the van, so she had to ride by herself because it was picking on certain people. So
Now, wait a minute, you said she. Who is she?
Thank
my
you.
secretary over there.
Well, you can't.
My mother, Alice Bowers.
Alice Bowers.
His partner.
Okay. For how long? How long you guys been married?
Oh,
now?
Lord, she have to tell you that.
I think Vivian can.
Okay.
63 years.
63 years.
That's a lot of years to wake up and look at the same woman.
Woo! Hey, look, you want to wake up in the morning and not be dead?
I was just what the man said he woke up with a stranger.
So, Vivian, as the daughter of and byproduct of these two amazing people, what has your life been like knowing that you were able to work for your father and your mother?
Well, as a child, it was just that. It was work. And it wasn't a whole heck of a lot of fun. I learned a lot because they were dedicated, hardworking people, which is why we are where we are today. So it wasn't a lot of fun. We worked always after school and on the weekends for the most part. And as a teenager, I thought I was grown, and I said, you know, I'm tired of making 25 cents an hour. Although my dad reminded me that he provided the roof over my head and the clothes on my back and the food on the table, but I went out and I pursued other work, and I made a whole 97 cents an hour. And my mother later told me that they actually called the cleaners to get a reference, and she gave me a very good reference, and so I landed a job. Many years have passed, and when you're a part of a business, a family business, you're always a part of a family business. So on weekends, evenings, I would go down and help where needed, helping with vacation times or whatever. And fast forward some 40 years later, in and around 1994, I had the opportunity to come back and take the helm of the ship.
So, why, in your estimation, the two of you, have you been able to survive and thrive in a very competitive and ever-changing industry, such as the cleaning business?
Shall I? I'll
Go ahead.
Well, somebody speak.
Okay. I feel as I watch my parents, it's resilience and perseverance, and delivering a good product and great service. You know, troubled times you're going to have. Muhammad Nasruddin used to say that we stood the test of time. And it can't be any truer because there were difficult times. There were 2 riots that we went through on Central Avenue. There was the drug and prostitution and gangs. And so it made it very difficult to stand the test of time. But when you have faith in God, number one, and you persevere and you're resilient, you can get back up and do what you're doing and survive and thrive. We don't want to just survive. We do thrive. And that's what I saw my parents do and why I felt encouraged to go back in 94.
One final question before we have to go to break, and that is your location, first of all. Where is the exact location of Bowers & Sons Cleaners?
We're located at 2509 South Central Avenue in the historic Central Avenue core.
And why should people in the greater Los Angeles County area go out of their way to bring their clothes to Bowers & Sons Cleaners?
Yes.
Well, you know, right, our slogan is The slogan that I coined was heads above the rest, because we are the best. But the slogan that my parents coined in 1950 was because we care enough to add a personal touch.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Horace Bowers, his lovely daughter, Vivian, and the first lady of the family.
That's right.
Alice Bowers.
She said that she didn't want to be on camera, and she's still sitting over here with her arm folded up, so I ain't going to, put her through no changes, because I think she means what she says.
And
but
I can't close without mentioning my husband now. He and I are partners in business, Mr. Greg Cowan.
But he's known around town as Greg Bowers.
Yes.
And he took it like a man. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with our show topic for this evening, and that is people moving out, people moving in. Why? Sometimes it's the color of their skin. Run, 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 but you sure can't hide. We're going to talk about gentrification when we get right black. All right, we are black and better than ever. Our subject matter tonight is gentrification and all of its implications. And what I did was I reached out to some brothers that I've known for many, many years who have special understanding and expertise as it relates to this subject matter of why people move where they move and the impact that it has on communities near and far. To my I don't even know how to say that because, directions and things is like, strange to me. I just point, across from me, on the mic to the whatever, is Mark Williams. His sister was in studio last week and proudly represented the interests of her family, Miss Juanita Tate and the Juanita Tate Marketplace, which is an unbelievable example of what it means to just stay engaged. So that's Mark Williams, and he will be speaking from his perspective about what gentrification means and how his family and his business interests have been able to thrive and survive despite radical changes in the demographics. And in the center mic is another native of Los Angeles, per se, And I've known this man for many, many, many years. We used to share an office complex together over on Imperial Avenue in Inglewood, California. He was a big supporter of recycling black dollars and an absolute expert when it comes to real estate issues. That's Herschel. Some people call him Heck Ramsey. And to his left and my right is one of the godfathers of real estate in Los Angeles. He didn't even bother about naming his company nothing but his name, Ted Brass. And also a big supporter of recycling back dollars back in the day. And I apologize for having my phone do that. But I want to kick this subject off by sharing an example of what gentrification means to me as we sit here this evening. I live in what they broadly consider as South Los Angeles. And in proximity to University of Southern California and what is now a showpiece downtown, the AEG complex. And AEG and USC between them have created a magnet effect in that part of town to the extent where it's not uncommon for me to see on a daily basis the rainbow, but particularly young white folks riding bicycles, walking dogs. And 10 years ago, that would have been unthought of. And I want to talk about what gentrification looks like from your perspective. I'm going to start with you, Mark.
From my perspective, gentrification looks like opportunity. The development process and the redevelopment process is part of the cycle. We just came past Easter Sunday, and that's about life, death, and resurrection. And I was raised to believe in the resurrection, and I think that that cycle is universal. So there can be winners and losers in the development and the redevelopment process, but I think for those that embrace it and are in a position or of a mind to participate in the process, those can be the winners, and at very least the folks that survive it without hardship. And for, I guess, the overwhelming majority of folks who don't participate in the process, they can be the victims of it. But it's not a special event. It's an ongoing process that's been here certainly since the founding of the country that we know about, and probably even before that. So it looks like opportunity to me, from my perspective.
I thought I cut this thing off. Now, the people that know me know I'm low tech, man. I can't even turn the phone off, man. That's terrible, ain't it? But, Mr. Ramsey,
Yes, sir.
Can you speak to what this subject matter means as it relates to your enterprise and how you look and view the process of seeing neighborhoods just shift in that direction? I'll give you an example of why I want you to answer the question in a certain kind of a way. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and he told me in 1959, his auntie bought a house in View Park, all right? And at the time, she was the first black person on that block. By 1961, all the white folks were gone. And now when I go to visit my friend in that area, I see white folks walking dogs. So how does that affect your business, and what's your feelings about gentrification?
Well, and I definitely agree with what Mark was saying about it's a process that's been going on since the beginning of time in our neighborhoods, pretty much throughout the United States. Los Angeles is a kind of unique type of area in retrospect to places like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, and other places where gentrification is going on. But the most important thing that I see, and I believe Ted will probably agree with me on this, is that the most important thing that we have to understand with gentrification is that we should continue to promote home ownership. We should continue to promote ownership within our community, and we can gentrify our own community. What I mean by that is that we shouldn't be put in a situation where we should allow outside forces to come in to determine how well our neighborhood is going to look. We should have more pride in our neighborhoods. Just because you don't make $50,000 a year doesn't mean that your home shouldn't be looking as well as it should be on the outside. Just because you don't make $50,000 or $60,000 a year that your kids can't be going to quality schools in the areas and neighborhoods that they live in. So when I see gentrification coming into what is now would be considered probably the last bastion of gentrification, which would be the Crenshaw corridor area, I think it's a perfect opportunity for private industry, particularly African American and maybe Hispanics and maybe anyone else who wants to get involved, because you follow the train. You're always going to follow that train, and when you follow that train, gentrification follows that train. We should always promote home ownership within at least 5 or 10, at least a 1 to 5 mile radius of anything that's going on within that area. If we're promoting home ownership in that area, that means that families will be able to maintain their houses. There should be affordable housing also available in those adjacent areas for those people who are not making $50,000 a year. Because you got to understand, eventually one day, if I'm owning the Starbucks or I'm owning this coffee shop or I'm doing this, I've got to pay the people that's going to be living in the same area that I'm making this kind of money. So as far as I'm concerned, gentrification can be, like Mark was saying, it can be a very good thing if you allow it to be. If you don't allow it to be, it can be very devastating to the community, to our culture, and to probably families for years to follow. No doubt about it.
Mr. Brass, and that's Theodore Brass to people of distinction, you have been in this business for how long now? Real estate.
37 years, Bobby.
37
Absolutely.
years. And you've seen some changes, and I'd like for you to speak to that. And then as you give us those thoughts, give us your perception of what gentrification is.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for having me on, having me on your show this evening. And over the last 37 years, it has certainly been a wide and a wild ride, I would say, but it's been a great one because I've been fortunate enough to have been able to sustain my lifestyle and just from the neighborhood within. That's why I'm so dedicated to the community, because it has been my source of income. I've not had to go out, get another job, or ask someone to sign a paycheck for me. So I have a lot of great experiences, and I'm very proud of my profession and working in the community. So with that being said, I have just over the years, having been in business, have seen this process taking place. I think it started back when I was in my earlier years in the business in the late 70s, early 80s, when I sold property. If I sold anything west of Crenshaw back then, it was just unheard of. And at the same time, we didn't see a lot of blacks going farther west in that direction. But at the same time, it started to change. And the process of gentrification it's a reverse situation. I've seen it in our community where we came in and started to acquire properties and sell, buy in the Leimert Park area, Crenshaw area, had people moving to View Heights, and the migration at the time started to also expand into our Windsor Hills, and eventually, and with that taking place, we started to see the exits of most of the whites that lived in those communities at that time. And that was a great time. But one of the things I always remember and looked at was I always considered what is now called South Central. I always thought of that as being our community, our hub. That's our base. And I fought tooth and nails with buyers who just did not want to buy anything east of Western, did not want to buy anything going closer to Vermont or Normandy, that corridor back then. So we allowed that gentrification process to take place because when you don't maintain, you don't support, you don't live, breathe, eat, and stay in your neighborhood especially for young blacks coming along, because that typically was their entree into the real estate market, to buy something that's affordable there as opposed to paying rent in Marina Del Rey or Culver City and those type things. So we allowed that to take place. And I preached to so many young blacks at that time, hey, get a start, buy it. And when you do, keep it, rent it out, or allow that to be something that maybe your children will have as a base to start. Because that's always something I've looked at and have felt has been essentially one of the haves or have-nots are things that in our community that we've not had, a base established to pass along. You talked earlier with Bowers and Son Cleaners. I think that's one of the unique parts, that they've had this history, this tradition, and they've kept it and allowed it to pass along. So that's how you fight the gentrification process of your quote-unquote community. And of course, I have some other ideas when we talk about gentrification today, because, I mean, mostly that there are so many economic factors. But rather than take the additional time, maybe I'll share a little bit earlier my thoughts on, a little bit later, my thoughts on that. But it's something that we need to be keenly aware of today. Yesterday, it's been, continues to be, and it's a matter of us, just as my good friend here, Brother Heck Ramsey, said, and also Mark, that's something that we have to be proactive and encourage and instill and promote and push as well, in order to make our community still be our community.
Wow. Mr. Bowers,
Yes, sir.
you are the resident elder here this evening, and you've been here long enough to, especially in the part of town you're in right now, the Central Avenue corridor, and the amazing changes that have been going on for the last several years. Can you speak to how it makes you feel to know that you survived that radical change in demographics and everything else?
I would like to do that. First, I want to say the gentlemen, what they said was, I agree with them. It's Central Avenue, and I think I first moved over there in the 63, I believe it was. I guess you were still just little boys then. But it was predominantly black. People would ask me, why would you go to Central? I said, well, that's a black area. That's what we are. Looking for a home, I wanted to buy over there. I said, if I want to find me a place on 28th, you had those big homes over there. I'm gonna buy me one, put me a big fence around. And but I didn't do that. But I did try to buy property, and I used to tell people that land, dirt, they're not making anymore. Anytime you can buy you some dirt, get it. And that's what I've tried to do. We bought places over the city here, and it's just something we need to. And that part about keeping your property up, keeping your neighborhood up, it takes a whole neighborhood to keep it up. Just one person can't do it. Right. You see something going wrong, you need to stop it. Don't just let it just go on. And this is one of the things we do. I noticed when I first moved to this part of town, as you were saying, you looked like you were all alone. Then after a while, that's all you saw was you. Now every time I get up in the morning, somebody up with another's walking the dog in front of my house. This thing is just, and what we call our good neighborhoods, where are we going now? Is something is happening to black folk.
Oh, they in the desert. They went back down south.
I don't think they want them down south.
Well, they went back anyway.
I don't think they have welfare down there.
Well, no, they got welfare everywhere. But I understand what you're saying, and I want to take a moment before we have to go to break to acknowledge the seed that you produce, because about the time that I first met Vivian, she was frantically working on not just the business, but the community around the business. Can you speak to that process and what has happened since I first met you many years ago?
Okay, one of the things that I want to say, and thank you, Bobby. I didn't have an opportunity to say thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing for our community, and especially lifting up the black male. They need it, they deserve it, and I hope your book will inspire many, many more, especially the next generation. I want to say first that I returned to the business. My parents had decided it was time for them to retire in '94, and my brothers, I have two brothers, and they had their chances at the helm, and they were successful in their separate careers. Not that I wasn't in mine, but I didn't want to see, I was the one that had the most flexible job position, and I didn't want to see yet another black business close.
Mm.
And I didn't want to see someone else of another persuasion take over the dry cleaning business. Because of the pride that my and time and effort my parents had put into it. And I looked at it as something that took care of us all these years, so why couldn't it continue to take care of myself and my family? And you know, I had hopes that, and we don't know, one of my sons or nephews would take over in the future and just keep the legacy going. I'm proud to say, my dad hasn't mentioned it, but they also bought the block over a period of time. So that's Bowers Retail Complex now. And you know, they've bought property all in the area, trying to what shall I say, promote the idea of don't move, improve.
I love that. I love that. I heard that coming up down south. Now, speak to that area, because there's been a facelift in the last 5 years, and you contributed mightily to aligning the forces to support that in terms of the politicians and the community-based organizations. So briefly kind of tell us that process and the outcome of it.
Okay. About 5 or 6 years ago, as you mentioned, CRA LA, many of you may know about that, Community Redevelopment Agency, also worked a little bit with Mark and his project, the Tate Project. They wanted to come in and do a little gentrification, a little cleaning up. People were afraid to take money from the city. People were afraid that, you know, they're going to control us. They're going to tell us what to do. Well, in a sense, they do, but they work with you. And so I was able to bring this program to the community through Central Avenue Business Association, which we formed about the same time as CRA LA brought that funding to our area and brought the program, which was signs, awnings, and paint, or a bigger project, which is what we did on Central Avenue. At that same time, they were Jan Perry was councilwoman, and she was trying to bring healthy foods, stores, restaurants to the community, and brought in Meta Housing next door to us, which then brought in Fresh and Easy, which has been a big plus. So we looked at the fact that Fresh and Easy is coming in, they're putting in new housing, affordable housing, which many of us were able to take advantage of, thank goodness, but many other people of other persuasions are in that building as well. They saw the area changing, or what? Gentrifying, and they came into the area. So we saw it as an opportunity to also improve the appearance of our building, of our lot. And I'm happy that my parents bought into it to receive this grant from the city. And it did wonders for our block. So that entire block now from 25th to Adams is just, to
It's
me,
shining.
a
It's
stellar
shining like a new
example
penny.
of what
Yeah.
you can do when you take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded you, rather than running for them, embrace them.
Okay, we're going to take a short pause and deal with some of the resolutions to this issue, because it seems to be a consensus among my guests this evening that gentrification is not a bad thing. It is what it is. And what we want to talk about is the economic implications of it, as well as the trends that we are experiencing, and how we marry those forces and do what we can while we can to ensure that there is a place for the African American community to call home, that's not 50 miles out there in the desert somewhere.
Amen.
So we'll be right back. Black, and I tell you, I am so pleased to. It's like a family reunion because I know everybody in here long enough to know how I feel about them, and it's an honor to have these kind of people in the room with me this evening. We've been joined on the microphone by Mr. Greg Cowan, who you want to know what a real man look like? That's him right there, because you got to be a real strong person in your own self to, marry into a prominent family and then walk around the way this brother do. So welcome to the Real Men Don't Play show,
Well,
Greg.
thank you very much.
Yeah. So what's it been like working with the family and watching and witnessing what has evolved in the time frame that you've known this family and become a part of the family, so to speak?
Well, my father and mother-in-law have given me a lot of education in terms of real estate and real life. And, listening to everybody talk about various things, I guess I always came away with the idea, having grown up in the South and grown up in Pasadena, gentrification basically meant competition. If you get in there, you can fight the same fight. You have nothing to be afraid of. You do a good job. If you do, you'll survive. And so with their help and understanding, I was able to marry in with the family with their blessing. And I always said, yeah, I took great steps up. So that's why you'll have no complaints from me.
Well said. I'm going to go back around the room and we're going to deal with this from an economic perspective. For example, before AEG put their footprint in the downtown area, there was a lot of wasted real estate and very little activity after 5 o'clock. And once they did anchor themselves in the downtown area, and then we start seeing proliferation of academic activity, what has kept African Americans from participating more fully in that, in your estimation, Mark? And what can we do about that?
I think what's kept African Americans from participating is just perception, that the opportunity is elsewhere. When Vivian says she was taught to improve instead of move, that wasn't the ethic for the black community from the 1960s onward. The integration process meant to leave where you are to move to a better place. And you were moving to a better place in practical ways, safer schools, better schools for your children, better housing, typically at not at a better price, but of a better value. But one of the byproducts of that process is that the folks who typically have the economic and political wherewithal to maintain the place where we were took all that expertise elsewhere.
Brain drain is what they call it in some
The
places.
community suffered as a result. But for example, in my particular family, my great-grandfather moved to 50th and Compton, which is about 4 blocks east of Central Avenue, in 1905. And my great-grandfather and his wife accumulated about 2 square city blocks of property. So when the majority of black folks in the community with that wherewithal and expertise, when they moved out, our family's holdings were too great at that time to move anywhere. The other thing is that my mother was raised, my mother was born and raised in Philadelphia, and she raised us in Philadelphia, and she moved to Los Angeles to be with her father after many years to prepare for the 1984 Olympics. So my mother came to the Vernon Central community as an immigrant and with an immigrant's perspective on things. She saw opportunity, and she wasn't burdened with the history that dissuades a lot of folks from taking advantage of the opportunity that's right there before you. It's right there before you, if only you could see it.
Please regurgitate that almost word for word, because that's something that I want my audience and my people to understand, the magnitude of what this brother just said and how it affects our behavior.
Well, think about it this way. My grandfather in 1905 was an immigrant to California. And during a time when racism and structural problems were far greater than anything that
We
I
can
can
imagine,
recall
right.
or experience, he was able to accumulate 2 city blocks of property. My mother came to California 45 or 50 years later to a decimated Vernon Central community. The crack wars were raging, the gang wars were raging, and all of the folks with the sort of mentality that that we were accustomed to had long gone. But when my grandfather got here, the west side was west of Main Street. So, I kind of laughed. You know, he was talking about
Crenshaw.
So on and so forth. But having said all that, the demographic changes come to the Vernon Central community, and their people, they're immigrants, just like black folks were once immigrants to the same place. Contrary to popular belief, the current immigrants did not force black people out. Black people moved voluntarily. The folks that could go and had the wherewithal to go on their own went in the 1970s. And then in the 1980s, public policy made it possible to buy a house on welfare in Rialto. A lot of the men went to jail, and a lot of the women and their children moved to greener pastures, so to speak, or it appeared to be that way at the time. But my family, because we have a stake there, our perspective has always been to improve where we are, and you know, through the grace of God, we've been able to do that.
Man, thank you so much. Heck, the economics of gentrification, can you speak to that?
First of all, I'd like to say hello to my Pasadena brother. I'm another Pasadena brother. Thank you very much. PHS Bulldog.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
The perspective that I see, Bobby, on this is that economically, well, there's 3 factors that I see when it very important when it comes to gentrification. Well, number 1 is access
To
what in the areas that are being gentrified.
Okay.
That access to those areas, you've got safety. That is a major concern to most areas. You've got attractability, availability, and someplace that you want to be. Now, economically, what will happen is, in most cases, when you have a gentrified piece of area going through, what you're seeing is, we'll just call a spade,
Please.
You have white folks coming in, buying property. You have the hipsters coming in, buying it. They're coming in. They want to regurgitate it, bring it back up. What happens is values of the property in that area go up. People who have been there for years and years and years, they reap the benefit of that, but new people trying to come in, new black people or Hispanics or anybody else can't buy because it's too high. What happens now is that you've got a pulling force going on. You have the haves, you have the have-nots, and there is no middle ground. It's called a working poor, I call it. When you have to have maybe 2 or 3 jobs in a household, when you have the median income in Los Angeles, it's probably around $50,000 to $60,000, and with values going up this day and age, you cannot buy in LA pretty much. So what I feel when it comes to the affordability factor, when it comes to the economic factor involved, is that there's got to be some programs or policies in line that will allow, number 1, our neighborhoods to remain and build, as she said, as bring it back up to what it was in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. Bring back that neighborhood the way it used to be, have affordable housing in that area, have income in that area to meet that. Because you're not going to have too much of a growth in that area if you don't have the income to go with it. They're going to be moving out to the Rialtos. They're going to be moving out to the
Inland Empire,
the Riverside areas. We're losing what little African-American culture we have left in LA. So as far as I'm concerned, the most important part is to make sure that we can make it available, affordable, safe, and access to all people of color so we can stay at home and we don't have to go anywhere else.
Mr. Brass, I want to kind of concentrate on something that I'm sure that you have had privy to in terms of information and conversations about, and that's that Crenshaw corridor in particular, as it relates to this conversation. And the rumors that are floating around right now is it's pretty much a done deal as far as all of the shops that used to be the showpieces in the Leimert Park area, the commercial properties, for example.
Right.
And before I say that, I remember many years ago you talked about at Recycling Black Dollars events that we needed to buy commercial property in the community. First of all, how do you feel about the fact that we didn't do it, and what's been the outcome of that?
Well, Bobby, it's funny that you should say that, because as Herschel was talking about the process of gentrification, I just said Eureka. It is a classic example of, and right now in the Crenshaw corridor, that is well on its way, that classic example of our urban communities being acquired by other than those who live, and the price is going up. All of those factors by wealthier and then escalating, pushing the price. So I think that that's something that I, just as you shared earlier, years back, knew very well, because that's a cycle in history that has taken place and continues to. Unless we learn from the past, it is doomed to repeat, and it's coming full force right now, full circle right now. In that Leimert area, with the light rail coming through, we have seen many of those properties in that Leimert Park area have already been acquired. Already been acquired by folks that don't look like us. Okay? They see that cycle and are working and allowing it to take place. So if you don't own the commercial, that's a business center. That's the mecca of the community around you, because the business, the jobs, which right now is one of the most critical factors in our community, is the lack of jobs. And once again, that's because that commercial cycle has not maintained it. We didn't acquire, or we didn't maintain, we didn't keep those buildings so that we can employ other blacks in the community and everything. So that gentrification process is full force right now in the Crenshaw area. I will tell you that right now. I'm sure Mark can attest to that from the building development perspective, and I know Herschel sees it and knows it very well. So if we don't right now make a concerted effort to acquire some of those properties, there is special financing, there's cost. I see, as you've shared in the Leimert Park area and so many others that are in that area, but since we're talking about that area, the Crenshaw corridor, 3 miles either side of the light rail will be a mecca. I see people right now acquiring properties coming from Santa Monica and acquiring those properties, helping to really pushing strong block clubs and doing all those things, walking the dogs, participating in the process, and they're increasing the value of those properties. And that is, the true essence of gentrification, where our urban communities are being acquired by, and we're moving out, they're moving in, values are going up, and once you leave, you will not be able to come back again. I saw.
It ain't funny. I just don't want to start crying on the show.
I'm here to tell you, it's something that we really. I've seen it in my profession, in my business. Go full cycle. I've seen people that moved out and people who tried to move back to, and they're not able to. I had a lady cry when she saw the value of properties and what she had in the outside of Chicago, that she could not purchase anything close to that. And this was residential because she couldn't, because the values had gone up. So with business, it has just a double impact. It has a lack of losing jobs, as well as losing the value of properties in our communities. So that's something that, once again, we just still need to be cognizant of and just really make concerted effort in terms of, even if we get together, reach out, brothers, share, put our dollars together and do that, and which is something that we've just not done enough of to make it happen, because most of the conglomerates coming in, there is a consortium. It's not
That's the
generally
word,
one
consortium.
person.
Yeah, right,
It's a
right.
consortium. They're smart enough to know that with acquiring real estate, it's always there for you to be able to have your division of ownership. You may have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, whatever, but we just have never done a lot of that. And I saw that's been something that we've suffered from, both in the residential area and the and the commercial area.
I hate to stem the tide of this conversation, but we're approaching the end of the show. And Mark, you had a quick thought you wanted to make?
Yeah, so that we don't repeat the history that we don't know. The Leimert Park became the cultural center of African American Angelenos, but black folks never did own the property underneath it. And this is it's painful and it's irresponsible. If you are the keeper of the culture, the foundation for that renaissance in the middle of the black community, we didn't own it, right? I would encourage everybody to come on home to Central Avenue.
That's all that's left.
Yes. We have to make decisions
Right.
like most other communities do about where we want to collectively work together
Absolutely.
to lay the foundation for our own prosperity.
Well, what Mark just said is a good point for us to begin to round up this segment of the show, and that is, we can't unring the bell, but we do need to identify where there is opportunity,
Yes.
and then understand that it's in our own self-interest to look at each other as assets as opposed to liabilities, because what's done has already been done, and it's going to be really hard to accept as this thing just happens right in front of us. Yes, sir.
As you go, when you finish.
No, go ahead and make your point, because I got a couple more minutes.
Okay. All right. I was just listening. Something that we try to do things individually. If we ever learn how to pool our monies, there's no telling where we could go.
Well, I'm gonna have subsequent shows to support this, because it's that important. Because we got to move from if and all of that to what's the motivation. All right, because we've had these kind of conversations for 30 years, and we haven't really been able to get over that hump of, why should I do this? I know it sounds good, recycling black dollars, we should unify, but we got to go to that next level, to the point where we look at each other as assets as opposed to liabilities. And I want this to be an august body that breaks that down to the point where we can see the benefit of working with each other, because I go to these places and I'm prideful when I see Bowers and Sons, and now to find out that they got a retail complex and they did it themselves. And then I look at Mark and his sister, the point that I'm making, and Ted and Herschel. Marcus Garvey was right when he said, what men have done, men can do. But you got to know about it.
That's
okay?
right.
And that's why I wrote this book, Real Men Don't Play. It's a compilation of profiles about brothers from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, whose accomplishments speaks for them, and it illuminates a pathway to self-determination. You can get this book, the e-version of it, through Amazon and iTunes. I just printed my first run of this book that I'm waiting on Barnes & Noble to get back to me and say that they're going to allow me to put it in those stores. And in the meantime, other than seeing me wherever, because I'm going to have them with me, you can get it by contacting me at my email address, bobby@realmendon'tplay.com, or you can leave a note for me on my website, www.realmendon'tplay. Again, I'd like to thank all of my guests, and we're coming back to this subject matter more than once. And we're going to concentrate on resolutions and solutions to what normally is a sad tale of woe. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in the show tonight. And always remember, as I close my show each week, thank you for letting me be myself again.
Again.
One night.